In the heart of rural Vietnam, where jungle vines crawl over forgotten roads and rivers move slowly like sleeping giants, villagers lived ordinary lives above extraordinary secrets, unaware that beneath their fishing nets and irrigation pumps rested the skeleton of a war that once set the skies on fire. Until one dry season, when water levels dropped and a farmer's dredging tool struck metal instead of mud, sending vibrations through the riverbed that echoed across decades. And as curious hands brushed away silt, a sharp wing edge appeared, curved and riveted, not the shape of any boat or bridge, but the unmistakable signature of military aircraft. And in that moment, the jungle gave back what it had swallowed long ago, reminding everyone that the Vietnam War, though finished in history books, still slept beneath their soil, waiting to be disturbed. To understand how that aircraft reached the river, one must return to the skies of the late 1960s, when Vietnam had become the most heavily bombed region in human history, when American jets thundered overhead daily, flying low and fast through deadly corridors mapped with red ink, while anti-aircraft guns tracked them from hidden jungle clearings, and surface-to-air missiles streaked upward like spears of light. And pilots knew that every mission could be their last, because the enemy was invisible until it struck. And radar warnings screamed inside cockpits as engines pushed beyond limits, turning men into brief, blazing comets across the sky. And in those moments, survival depended on speed, training, and pure luck. On one such day, a single fighter jet roared toward its target area, tasked with striking supply routes believed to be feeding enemy forces moving south, flying so low that treetops blurred beneath its wings. When sudden flashes erupted from the jungle floor, shells tearing through the air, and the aircraft shuddered violently as metal ripped open, alarms screaming as fuel lines burst, and flames spread across the fuselage, leaving the pilot only seconds to choose between control and survival. And as the jet began to lose lift, the decision was made, the canopy blown away, the ejection seat firing with explosive force, launching the pilot upward while the aircraft continued its wounded dive, disappearing into the thick green below, crashing into a river bend where the water swallowed fire and smoke, erasing the final moment of impact. The pilot descended by parachute into enemy territory, landing among reeds and mud, injured but alive, rescued days later by friendly forces, eventually returning home, carrying scars that never faded, while his aircraft, officially recorded as destroyed, slipped quietly into forgotten files. Another line in endless casualty reports, another machine written off as combat loss, and as weeks turned into months and months into years, the crash site was never located, because war moves forward and battlefields shift, and jungles reclaim everything. And the river continued flowing, dragging silt across twisted aluminum until no trace remained above the surface. Vietnam's climate is not kind to wreckage, with monsoon rains that bury, heat that corrodes, and plants that grow faster than memory can keep pace, and where buildings fall, trees rise, where bomb craters fill, rice paddies appear, and entire battle zones vanish into farmland. And so the river quietly kept its prisoner, sealing the aircraft in layers of mud, while villages expanded and children grew up playing near waters that hid Cold War relics, unaware that beneath them lay fragments of battles fought before they were born, while history slept only a few feet below their feet. Then came the drought, lowering river levels and exposing parts of the riverbed never before seen, and when irrigation workers dug deeper channels to keep crops alive, their tools struck solid resistance. And as water was pumped away, metal surfaces emerged, scarred but unmistakable, sending rumors through nearby villages that something from the war had been found. And when local officials arrived and confirmed it was aircraft wreckage, the discovery spread beyond the region, attracting historians, recovery teams, and former soldiers who understood what such finds meant, not just in terms of archaeology, but in emotional weight. Divers entered the dark water, guided only by touch, feeling along broken wings and twisted fuselage sections, mapping what remained buried, discovering that large portions of the aircraft were still present, pressed deep into the riverbed by decades of sediment, while cables were attached and pumps worked to clear mud. But the river resisted, clinging to its long-held secret, forcing recovery teams to work slowly, carefully, respecting both the danger of unexploded ordnance and the possibility of human remains, because every wreck might still carry the last trace of someone who never made it home. When heavy machinery finally began pulling the aircraft upward, the river released it inch by inch, rusted panels breaking the surface like bones rising from a grave, and crowds gathered in silence as the jet emerged, its cockpit shattered, paint flaking, but still clearly a warplane built for speed and violence. Now powerless and broken, and in that moment, the battlefield briefly returned to the present, forcing witnesses to confront how close the war still lived to their daily lives, not in museums, but beneath their crops and rivers. Experts examined serial numbers, engine components, and weapons mounts to determine the exact model and unit, linking the wreck to archived mission reports, slowly reconstructing the story of its final flight, confirming that the pilot had survived, but also revealing that many other jets had vanished in similar ways, never recovered, leaving families without graves, without answers, only fading photographs and unanswered questions. And this single aircraft became a symbol of thousands of untold stories scattered across Vietnam's landscape. Across oceans, veterans and relatives followed news of the recovery, knowing that each discovery offered a chance for long-delayed truth. Because for families of missing pilots, a crash site is not just metal, it is evidence. Proof that someone lived, fought, and did not simply vanish into paperwork. And even when survivors existed, the recovery of wreckage reopened old memories of fear, survival, and survivors' guilt, reminding veterans that while they escaped, their machines and many of their comrades did not. Vietnam remains one of the most heavily contaminated countries in the world, with unexploded bombs and hidden wreckage. And every year, farmers still uncover shells that never detonated, aircraft parts rusting in fields, and even human remains, proving that the war continues to shape lives long after the shooting stopped. Because the past is not past when it lies beneath your feet, and each discovery forces communities to confront dangers and memories they never asked to inherit. The recovered jet was eventually moved to a military storage yard and later displayed as a historical artifact. No longer feared, no longer hunted, now standing quietly under open sky, stripped of weapons, its purpose transformed from destruction to remembrance. And visitors who walk past it see not power, but fragility, not speed, but stillness. And children who climb near it touch cold metal that once shook the air, unaware of how close this machine came to ending a life, and how narrowly a pilot escaped becoming part of it forever. Yet the river still flows, and historians know it likely hides more secrets, because dozens of aircraft went down over waterways during the war, some never recorded, some intentionally erased. And while satellites and sonar now scan landscapes, many wrecks remain beyond reach, sealed beneath layers of time, their stories waiting for chance and curiosity to uncover them, proving that history does not always reveal itself when we want it to, only when nature allows. The air war over Vietnam pushed technology to its limits and pilots beyond human endurance, with missions flown daily under relentless pressure, where mechanical failure, enemy fire, and exhaustion formed a deadly triangle, and despite advanced machines, survival still depended on the split-second decisions, and many who flew never had time to eject, never sent final messages, never left more than burning fragments scattered across jungle valleys, and every recovered aircraft represents dozens that were never found. In the end, the jet pulled from the river is not important because of its model or weapons, but because of what it represents. A moment when war intruded into nature, when human conflict fell into water and mud and stayed there for generations, and when it finally rose again, it did not return as a threat, but as a reminder that power fades, empires retreat, but consequences remain, carried silently by landscapes and people alike. And so the jungle river flows on, carrying no flames now, no falling aircraft, only reflections of sky and trees. Yet beneath its calm surface, echoes of engines and explosions still linger in memory, reminding us that every war leaves behind more than graves and treaties. It leaves behind scars in earth and water, and when history resurfaces, it does not ask to be judged, only to be remembered. because some stories are too heavy to stay buried forever.